We are meeting today to discuss virtual job searching. As you all know, we are in a virtual world that none of us expected. And so many of the things that we would be doing in person are now being done virtually. And so I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panelists, and I'm going to turn it over to them. We are very lucky to have three of our partners on the call today, and they'll be presenting to you. The Ohio Legal Diversity Consortium consists of Thompson Hine and the University of Akron Law School, Case Western Reserve University School of Law, and the Cleveland Marshall College of Law. And so we've got Alisa Benedict O'Brien, who currently serves as the Assistant Dean of Career Services and Strategic Initiatives at the University of Akron School of Law. She is a graduate of the Cleveland Marshall School of Law and has practiced in areas of estate planning, probate administration, and corporate law. She utilizes her experience to counsel students and alumni on a wide variety of topics, including career paths, interviewing skills, and the impact of legal writing on resumes, cover letters, judicial clerkships, public interest careers, careers with law firms, and alternate careers for JDs, and overall professionalism. Sarah Beznoska is the Assistant Dean for Student and Career Services at Cleveland Marshall College of Law and has worked in higher education since 2007. She's a graduate of Duke University Law School and practiced for nearly 5 years in both public and private practice settings. She advises law students on career and academic planning and conducting employer outreach and related marketing, administering externship placements and developing programs related to professionalism, career development, and job seeking. Mary Beth Moore serves as the Assistant Dean of Career Development at Case Western Reserve University School of Law, and she's also a graduate of Cleveland Marshall College of Law. And in her role at Case, Mary Beth has significant expertise with employer outreach and externship formation and maintenance. And so we are in wonderful hands for this virtual job searching program, and I'll turn it over to you all.
Thanks, Nirvana. We were just delighted to be asked to talk on this topic, so timely. And so when we divided our plan for the day, our overall topic are tips for diverse law students and new graduates in managing a virtual job search and networking. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about networking, but do keep in mind that the virtual job search has a lot in common with the non-virtual job search in that the basics still apply. So as we tell our students and our new grads, your resume still has to be in tip-top shape, error-free, same for your cover letter. Your work ethic should stay strong, and you should be able to demonstrate that. Keep your attention to detail sharp. And if anything, now you can highlight a little more of skills that you've gained since March, and we've all had to pivot quickly. You can talk more in interviews or in informational, interviews as well about your flexibility, your adaptability, your resilience. You'll hear that a lot. Your time management, and even your comfort level with all things tech, right? So here we are living in this virtual world, and thankfully our students are pretty comfortable in the tech world, and so they can highlight that as well. So as far as networking goes, building relationships is a key component to any job search. So as you know, and you've heard from your career advisors, the employers of interest for you may not have a job to offer at the moment, but they certainly are willing to start a conversation. And so make a good first impression, do some outreach, build some relationships, and then those same employers, when they hear of something later on in the process, will definitely keep you top of mind when kind of a hidden job arises because you've made that impression and done your homework and your outreach to them. So one key component for diverse students looking in a virtual world is to connect with diversity managers early on. So whether this is, if you've seen an employer, whether it's a law firm or a corporation or a nonprofit government agency, if they're of interest to you and you want to start a conversation, it's probably a great idea to get to know who their key players are in the diversity and inclusion space early on and start that conversation. So whether you're bold enough and you feel your documents are ready enough to send an application or not, at least do that initial outreach. And if you feel hesitation, flip that conversation in your head. Now is the time when diversity officers and other recruiters are kind of expecting your outreach, quite frankly. And they're expecting things, they know things are virtual. So, you know, if you're interested in DC, you're here in Cleveland, you're interested in Seattle, you're here in Cleveland, you can do that virtual outreach to them anywhere, because here we are in this virtual world. Let them kind of know early on what value you can add to their organization. That goes a really long way. As far as developing a networking list, you know, update one if you have one. If you don't, now is the time to create that. So think about who you already know, you know, who's kind of in your personal board of directors already from undergrad or past experiences, past jobs. Think about who you want to know, and then maybe think about the people who can help those connections take place. Include them all on your networking list. Keep it pretty orderly. I think that's key as well. And then you'll start to build that professional pipeline with prospective employers. If you keep that up to date and you do some follow through, you know, I like to tell students maybe once a semester is a good time, if not more. You don't want to certainly be, you know, viewed as a pestering people, but you'd like to give updates at strategic points in your legal career. So I like the once a semester, giving an update, keeping that networking list strong and keeping your outreach strong. Think about when you're developing that list, who are, like for your particular law school, who your diverse alumni are, your diverse mentors, and then eventually if there's an employer of particular interest, who might be willing to sponsor you at that employer. So think that through and talk to your career advisor about that as well. And then just not to keep going with the mentorship, but it's so important, you know, reconnect with prior mentors. Now is a great time if you haven't been in touch. You know, for anyone else who are on the call, you know, let them know you started law school and the first week and a half, 2-3 weeks have gone really well, or haven't. You know, reconnect with your mentors now and get their advice early on. Talk to your career advisors about alumni lists. So if you don't really know where to begin with that, we often maintain alumni lists based in different criteria, whether it's for a city your alumni are in or practice areas. You know, we have lists like that. And then we also always recommend LinkedIn. Anyone who doesn't know me well will soon know when they get to know me that I talk about LinkedIn probably at every counseling session, because I think it's a really valuable tool and it's super valuable in a pandemic. Join your local and state bar associations in, not just in Cleveland, do join in Cleveland, but join in desired markets as well if you're not keen on staying here after you graduate. Absolutely join affinity bar associations. We offer, you know, in Ohio, we have a plethora of opportunities to connect and learn through these affinity bar associations, and they're very supportive. The more active you are, the more you will get out of it. Here in Cleveland, our Black Lawyers Association is the Norman S. Minor Bar Association. I would absolutely encourage your membership and participation in that. You know, we have Arab American Bar Association of Ohio, Women's Bar Association, Ohio Hispanic Bar Association, many opportunities to be active in different bar associations. And for the CMBA, they also have a diversity section, which if you join there and make an impression, maybe spearhead a discussion or a conversation, that will go a long way in building your network and finding mentors as well. All right, a little bit more. So think about conducting these informational interviews on Zoom or Skype, you know, things that you're comfortable with. Maybe what your initial outreach says, could I have 15 minutes of your time? You know, I'm available on Zoom at your convenience. It's not an awkward format anymore. I'm sure you're super familiar with that. Last but not least, think about volunteering. So you're busy, there's a lot going on, but the volunteering piece really, I think, will help augment everything in every aspect of your search, right? It makes you feel good, it's good for others. Staying engaged in your community, even remotely during law school, is one of the most important things you can do. So consider, like, what's your passion and what is your kind of mission in life? and put yourself out there and offer yourself as a volunteer. You know, even as maybe a 1L in their first semester, you'd be surprised if someone needs you to, you know, manage their Zoom or whatever the case may be, take names, take a roll call. You're going to get to know people, and then you'll have that volunteer experience to be proud of as well. All right, I will turn it over now to my colleague Alisa Benedict O'Brien to talk about job searching.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Mary Beth. All right, good evening, everyone. So wonderful to have so many of you with us. So we are going to talk a little bit now about actually launching a job search right now in this virtual world. So first and foremost, the most important thing right now to think about, whether you're a new law student or an upper division student or a graduate or an associate already in the market, is it is more important now than ever to stay visible and relevant as you launch your job search. So I'm going to share with you some tips that we've all collectively come up with that we think will really put you in a great position to keep the momentum. So first and foremost, if you think back to March when the pandemic first occurred, many of you may have already been underway with a job search. And if that was for summer or post-grad, we know a lot has happened. So since that time, the most important thing right now is to stay engaged with any employers that you've already been in touch with. So again, that could be from the spring. Maybe you did some outreach or applications this summer that haven't gone anywhere quite yet, or maybe you've just started to ramp up applying. But it's really important that you stay engaged and in touch with employers. And you can do that by sending a follow-up email to check in on an application status, or sending an outreach email, maybe perhaps after you've interviewed. You can do that by even picking up the phone and just checking in. I talked to a hiring partner just last week who said, you know, it's been wonderful to have some applicants just call and ask how we're doing in all of this and kind of how it's impacted the firm, and just to say that they wanted to check in. So conversations like that can go a long way as you're trying to stay visible and relevant and to make a really good impression. And you can even send a brief email if you've seen a relevant news story or article about the particular employer that you're trying to engage with. But the idea is that you as a job seeker understand right now that hiring perhaps may be delayed, but you really want to stay engaged and stay at the front of mind with these employers and to stay visible and relevant throughout the entire job search. Another great tip to do that is, as Mary Beth advised, as you're thinking of your network and your mentors and making either a physical list or a mental list, setting up Google alerts is a great way to get up-to-date information on the employers that maybe you're already engaging with or that you want to put on your radar to make sure that you're aware of job opportunities as they arise. So definitely keep that in mind as well. It's really nice. You set it up, you get an alert about a particular firm, and then that might be the reason that drives you to reach out and to stay in touch. I would also echo what Mary Beth shared about staying in touch with the bar associations, particularly the affinity bars, and to identify who our diverse industry leaders are and to keep tabs on when and if they're hiring and to add them to your repertoire of job potential opportunities there. For those of you who are moving forward in a job search at this stage, if it gets to the point where it may be that an interview is going to be postponed, I definitely recommend that you suggest a virtual interview if in-person interviews are not the preference. It's funny, we gave a similar presentation back in the spring when a lot of this was new. And at that time, we were definitely focusing on virtual interviews. But now I'm sure, as many of you are noticing, a lot of professionals are comfortable with meeting in person. So I think a great tip as you're thinking about setting up interviews for some of these job opportunities is to suggest, if you are able to drive that conversation, that you would be open to virtual or in person so that you're giving folks a choice and maybe making them feel a little bit comfortable. And I think employers will do the same for you. One thing to note is, of course, that because we are virtual, your job search can be so much more expansive, perhaps outside of your geographical location. So virtual is still a great way to go. And I know all of the Career Services office on this call and beyond have lots of tips for you for virtual interviews. And we have a program in this very group that we will do eventually as well, too, that will hopefully help you to prepare. Next, I really want to encourage you to use all of the job search tools at your disposal. So I know everyone is very tech savvy, most likely on this webinar. And so checking out frequent job boards, making sure that you have search agents set up on these various job searching websites, making sure that you identify and have access to various legal publications, that you know where to go for the various bar association job boards. Those are all tools at your disposal that you can be frequently checking for job opportunities right now in this virtual world. And I know many of the job search boards now have very compatible apps as well that a lot of my students and grads have told me are very helpful to make sure that you're constantly in the know as opportunities open up. So definitely take advantage of those opportunities. With that said, though, we also want to encourage you to think beyond just looking at job postings. Right now, more than ever, it's important that you think creatively about how you can identify job opportunities that are there. So as you just heard about networking, I'm sure you're starting to see that networking and your job searching and applying go hand in hand. So as you're trying to think beyond just applying to job postings that you find either online or through your career services office, make your network contacts a partner in your job search. So once you start to build those relationships and your network contacts know you or maybe have become mentors to you, make them a partner in your job search. And oftentimes they will be the ones to direct you to some of these opportunities that are there as well. I would be remiss if I didn't encourage you to work with your career services folks. So I know that we have students and grads from our 3 respective law schools, and I think we might have students here from other law schools as well. I would encourage you to reach out to your career services folks. We have been very busy since the spring, bringing ourselves up to speed with virtual job searching, making sure that we have the most up-to-date and relevant resources and best practices to share with you all. And also, we love what we do, so we are here to help you. So please do not hesitate to reach out. And that goes for any practicing lawyers right now too. Every career services office provides some type of alumni service as well. So please keep that in mind. Speaking of resources through the career services office, I did want to mention for our law students on the call that coming later this semester, most career services offices and most likely your affinity student leaders at your law schools are going to have information about some excellent diversity clerkships and fellowships that we would encourage you to check out and to consider and to think about applying. Typically, a lot of these positions are for our 1Ls, although there are some 2L diversity programs that are out there as well. So be sure that you are in touch with your career services office as they deliver information about these fellowships. Keep in mind that generally speaking, a lot of the deadlines tend to happen in December, but more commonly in January. So now is a really great time to maybe do some research about the fellowships that typically occur and typically are available in the summers, and to start keeping a list of potential fellowships that you want to inquire about and then move forward with applying to as well. I also want to note, since we are in Northeast Ohio, that we do have an Akron Cleveland minority clerkship program that we usually get more information out to the students later in the fall, usually around October, November. So we will be delivering details as soon as we have those details. That is for first-year law students. And then lastly, speaking of these types of resources, I did want to mention the Legal Council on Legal Diversity. They also have very great resources as you're looking for positions, and they do also have a 1L list of fellowships. So that resource is available through their website. So those are all very excellent, and I hope you'll consider those. I did also want to mention, beyond career services, another ally is third-party legal recruiters. So in any market, there are going to be legal recruiters who either are helping place associates or partners, or who are just a great resource, because beyond just having job openings and having firms or corporations that they're trying to help fill positions, they have great tips about trends in the legal market, and also can just be a good sounding board as you are trying to put together a job search plan. So I'm sure that any of us would be able to point you in the direction if you don't have those types of contacts yet and you're interested in adding those to your list as well. Next, I want to just briefly encourage you all, if you have been job searching for a while, and this is more for our folks who are already graduated, although it's never too early to start thinking about this. you have been job searching for a while and you're sort of on the cusp of being interested in positions that are not traditional legal positions, but are what we call JD Advantage. So those for which your law degree is an asset, but perhaps bar is not necessarily required. There are a lot of companies that are thriving, and there are a lot of growing industries hiring folks with JDs now. So if that's of interest to you, I would definitely encourage you to explore. Just to mention a few areas, compliance is a hot area right now and has been for some time, but particularly financial and healthcare compliance positions are on the upswing. So that might be of interest. Government positions, including, for example, contract specialists, risk management positions. The area of data privacy and cybersecurity is huge right now. The insurance industry is growing and hiring at a rapid rate. And then lastly, legal tech. So those are just some examples of areas that you might consider if you maybe wanted to use your JD in a different way. Speaking of thinking a little bit outside the box, I would also encourage you to think about virtual or telework positions. Again, when we gave this presentation many months ago, this was sort of a novel concept, and now I'm sure many of you are seeing these positions are actively being advertised and posted and seem to be more readily available. I think something like this too, a virtual or telework position, also helps you connect in a market outside of maybe where you're currently residing, because it'll allow you to maybe do some work for an employer that maybe you otherwise wouldn't have had the opportunity to do. And I know that on our own job boards now that we use in law schools, employers have the option to indicate if they have virtual positions available. So definitely think about that if that's maybe an area you hadn't previously explored. Also, I think it's really important in the vein of being creative, as you are looking for jobs and contacting employers about particular positions, or maybe contacting employers to see whether they are hiring, I would just encourage you to be really creative and to offer a variety of services. So it's not necessarily that if they're not hiring a full-time law clerk or maybe not hiring for a full-time associate, perhaps you can be creative and propose some projects that you can do part-time or short-term or on a project-by-project basis. So just a few examples, online research, doing some legal writing for an employer, offering some technical assistance, perhaps with a presentation that a particular lawyer is working on, maybe helping to draft e-newsletters or client alerts on a current legal topic, doing some electronic document review. So the idea is that you can propose that you are available and ready to work to do short-term or interim assistance, for example, on an upcoming trial or large-scale project. This will really make you marketable and help the employer to get to see the value that you would bring to the organization. And then if a permanent position were to arise, you already would be a known commodity. So I would definitely encourage you to do that. Lastly, I just want to mention a few online resources that I would encourage you all to take a look at as you are launching your job search or maybe reinvigorating your job search at this stage. I want to give a shout out to the Ohio Legal Diversity Consortium website. Our website is growing. We have some resources there already, but make sure that you add that into your list of resources as you are job searching. I already mentioned the Legal Council on Legal Diversity, LCLD website. They have some great videos and other resources there that I think will be very helpful as a supplement to your job search. I want to mention the American Bar Association. They have great resources as well as a job board that's there. And they also have a resume bank for those of you who are already graduated. Definitely check that out. And then lastly, I wanted to mention for those of you the majority of you, actually, your law school probably has a subscription to psjd.org. For those of you who haven't checked it out yet, sort of a clearinghouse for public interest careers. But as an alum or a current law student of a law school who is affiliated with PSJD, which I know we all are on this call, would have access. And there are great resources about job searching, including remote and virtual work. So I just don't mean to throw a ton of resources at you all, but I think that those are all sort of the ones I wanted to highlight. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Sarah, to talk to you about building your brand.
Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here with you all today and to be talking about these topics. And being a connection and a resource for you all. I'm very excited about Cleveland Marshall's participation in the Ohio Legal Diversity Consortium and the collaboration that we've been able to do both with Thompson-Hein, with Akron, and with Case Western. It's been helpful for me as a professional, and I know is going to be really helpful for our law students and our lawyers in the community. My job today is to kind of conclude us on a positive note, talk a little bit about the importance of controlling the things you can control in what looks like maybe a difficult economy for a little bit of time still. And those are your brand, your skills, and your adaptability. Those are things you should be excited about because you can control them, and they are things that you can be working on and developing, whether you're a law student on your third week of school or you're a lawyer in your second or third year. If they aren't looking now, employers are eventually going to be looking for people who stayed flexible and adaptable and who were proactive and forward-thinking amidst everything that has been going on since March. Because I did mention, or I am going to talk a little bit about personal brand. Before I do that, I just want to say something generally about the concept of a personal brand, because I think it's a super tricky question for many of the students that I work with. It's this sort of question of what do you do when who you are, your values, and how you express those values in the workplace sort of come up against norms of professionalism that realistically, in the very vast majority of workplaces, are created by the majority. And those things don't necessarily have to be in conflict, but maybe not exactly aligned. And that can be uncomfortable in the workplace. And it certainly isn't an easy question. And I think it is something we have to acknowledge up front. Part of the reason why this consortium exists is because we all here believe that there should be more inclusive workspaces, but we know the reality is that is not yet always the case. And we know that we're working to make more inclusive workspaces, but we know that you will be in situations where you have to sort of think deeply about these issues. So I really just want to acknowledge that if you're a law student or you're an attorney at the start of your career and you're sort of struggling with this concept of personal brand and not compromising your values for a job, you're not alone. I don't have great answers except to say that I do believe, I've already said, you have to think deeply about it. It can be psychologically very, very difficult. You need to engage your very most trusted mentors. And one of the things I'm excited about this consortium is the opportunity to connect people in the community, because I think that will be a really important resource for you. And I also think you need to ask people who are different from you, but who you trust to have conversations with you about your personal brand. So that could be law faculty, it could be administrators like Alisa, Mary Beth, myself, or whoever is working in that role at your law school. What is your personal brand? I already said it, it's who you are, it's your values, it's how you choose to express those in the workplace. It's your value proposition to clients, to peers, to colleagues. And you develop that by, consistently presenting that personal brand to folks and by reinforcing it through your actions. In the virtual environment, which we're operating in now, both Alisa and Mary Beth have already mentioned, it's a really good time to think about polishing your online image to be consistent with your personal brand, updating your application materials, and crafting the pitch you're going to make to employers when you're speaking with them, when you're doing your networking. On LinkedIn, you want to create or update your profile. So if you don't have one, Mary Beth already said make one. Now is the time. Make sure you have a professional profile picture. I know at Cleveland Marshall, we often engage our marketing team to help students take a professional profile picture. So certainly talk with your career folks about ways that you can get a professional profile picture. Make sure you have a strong headline. Make sure you update all your work experience. Work with your career office to review and update it every semester as you're a law student. But as you're an attorney, you want to be updating it as well to make sure that the experience that you're reflecting on your LinkedIn profile is consistent with the work that you've been doing and the skills that you have to offer. Remember also that employers will search you on all platforms. So LinkedIn, but Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever else you might be using, they are looking and they are going to be searching for you if you're applying for jobs. And so you need to choose whether you want those platforms to be public or not, entirely up to you. My advice is, though, to make sure that your professional brand across those platforms is consistent. That's part of that consistency and reinforcement of who you are and what value you're bringing, so that across all those places where you're engaging online, you're presenting a consistent professional presence that you feel confident about. We also, of course, in the legal field, still look at resumes, still look at writing samples, still definitely spend some time with cover letters. So the LinkedIn is certainly important. Those basic documents are important as well. And now is always a good time to revisit those, take a look. Even if you are a graduate, you can often have your career services office review those things for you. So if you haven't updated your resume in a while, now's the time, and engage your career services folks, even if you're graduated, to take a look at those and give you some feedback and advice. I would also suggest you practice your skills at advocating for yourself in conversation. Certainly use your law school's virtual resources to practice virtual interviews. You can do that with career services. I know many career services offices also set up interviews, mock interviews or informational interviews with alumni or attorneys in the community. Take advantage of those. Those are great opportunities to practice. Practice your elevator pitch. You know, when someone says to you, tell me about yourself, what is that quick piece that you're going to offer that will make you memorable to them? And talk with your career services folks to just sort of talk through the ways that you're marketing yourself to employers. You may be overlooking something about your skills or your background or your experience that your career services person would say, you know, why aren't you mentioning that to employers? So make sure that you're engaging with us, and we can help you think about what you might want to be highlighting about your skills. Think about and track your current transferable skills. So I know a lot of law students at the very start of their legal experience worry if they don't have legal experience coming into law school, and we always say that's okay. What you want to think about is the skills that you have that are relevant to the workplace. And certainly, I guess I would say if you're a practicing attorney looking maybe to pivot to a different practice area, if you're in a practice area that you feel like is drying up a little bit or you're getting a little bit nervous, this is maybe a good exercise as well to think about what are some of the transferable skills that you have from the practice area that you've been working in. On the law student side, I always emphasize multitasking, adaptability, time management is huge, work ethic, and Mary Beth already mentioned resilience, so we will hear that over and over again. I always encourage people to be forward thinking too. What new skills can you develop? So I think both of my colleagues have already mentioned emerging or busier practice areas, you know, remote technology skills that you can be developing to show that you can contribute to the workplace. But think about attending CLEs, other events that are going on virtually, webinars and new topics in the law to keep yourself updated on new and emerging practice areas. There are really, you know, it maybe sounds silly, but there are new and emerging issues every day. And so keep an eye on that, talk with your alumni, consider writing an article, a blog post, even a law review note on an emerging topic so that you can stay relevant. And above all, I would just really say, try very hard to stay positive. I know that some of you, whether you're a law student or a lawyer, are going to find yourself in unanticipated situations, given everything that has so quickly changed for all of us. Try very hard to adapt and be forward thinking. Lean on your networks, your alumni networks, your colleagues, your peers in the workplace, your law schools, and lean on each other for support. We're all moving forward right now in a new environment. Lastly, I would say just protect your mental and physical health and that of your family, friends, and loved ones. You are more successful when you are mentally and physically healthy, and so be sure that you're watching out for that as well. And with that, I think we might take questions if there's time for that, but I will defer to Nirvana on how she wants to handle that.
Yeah, absolutely. If anyone wants to unmute themselves and ask a question, please feel free to do so. Or if you'd prefer to send me a message directly in the chat, please feel free to do that as well. And I'll read your question out loud. And as we're waiting for folks to determine if they have questions, I just want to make a note that Sabrina has put into the chat the website for the Ohio Legal Diversity Consortium. Check it out. Stay engaged with us. We have a variety of upcoming programs and initiatives. We are launching a mock interview program for virtual mock interviews so that all of you who are interested can get some practice with practitioners and some of our career advisors. excuse me, for the new normal, I guess, with mock interviews or with interviews in a virtual space. I believe Sarah was just talking about, or maybe Alisa was just talking about health and wellness. And so we've decided to also include a variety of wellness programs that are also coming up. And so join us for those as well, because as much as we want to give you resources that are substantive to help you with your job search and with getting connected in the Ohio market for your for your careers, we also want to ensure that you're protecting your mental health and your physical health. And so we'll be doing some yoga and some mindfulness just to sort of get us through this crazy time. I was going to say unprecedented time, but I feel like that's been said enough. So does anyone have questions? I think I might have seen someone take themselves off of mute, but I don't want to use the Socratic method and call you.
Okay, I'll call myself out. Hi,
Perfect.
I just wanted to ask a little bit about the online presence and LinkedIn specifically. So as somebody who hasn't used LinkedIn for about, about 3 years, I have a profile, but it hasn't been updated in a while. And I was wondering if you could speak to, are there examples? What would you consider like an exemplary LinkedIn profile? And I guess also I noticed that there were like resume experts that you can hire on LinkedIn. Would you advise using those at all?
Well, I'll start, and then if Mary Beth and Alisa want to chip in, because I'm sure we all have thoughts on this. First of all, I will say that not up, at least in my experience, a LinkedIn profile that is not updated, if it is, it reflects your past experience, but doesn't show you graduated from law school or doesn't show that you're in law school, is worse than not having one. I have alumni or employers call me all the time and say, I looked up this person's LinkedIn profile and it's not updated at all. And then I've got to reach out to the student or the graduate and say, please update it. So if you have something floating around out there that's from years ago that you haven't touched in years, better to not have it than to have that floating around, but best to update it to certainly reflect where you're at now professionally. In terms of, sorry, I've got a dog that's barking. In terms of ideal, sorry. In terms of ideal LinkedIn profiles, I would suggest you consult with your career services and have them review your LinkedIn profile. So we at Cleveland Marshall have folks send us a link and we will actually review it and help them and give them feedback. I'm going to let my colleagues chime in so that I can mute the barking dog.
So I'll go next. I, of course, echo everything Sarah had mentioned. And in addition to, my strong guess is that each of us have some sort of program dedicated to online presence. So, we're having our professional development program coming up here this semester dedicated to your online presence in LinkedIn. So if you want to see an ideal, what an ideal LinkedIn page looks like, pay attention to that speaker. She's a member of the Norman S. Minor Bar Association too. I'll tell you in advance who's coming to speak for us. But I also wanted to mention that once you are confident that your LinkedIn is in good shape, because I completely agree with Sarah, it's better to have no LinkedIn than an outdated LinkedIn. It kind of insinuates a bit of not a strong work ethic, right? Like you're not keeping your LinkedIn up to date. But in addition to that, view LinkedIn as a two-way street. So once you feel comfortable that you have your current law school information, you have your headline, you have a headshot that's professional and recent, start connecting with alums that way and talk with your career advisor, as Sarah also mentioned, and we can help connect you with alums in a targeted way through LinkedIn. And I find that if you reach out to 10 alums, at least one, hopefully 3 or 4 will get back to you, especially in a pandemic where they're very sympathetic to reaching back out.
All right. Well, I don't know if anyone directly responded to his question about hiring online resume reviewers, but you've got 3 excellent resume folks who
Right.
can review your resume right here and as part of the Ohio Legal Diversity Consortium. So if there is a need for that, please, connect with us, and it's free. So don't pay someone when you've got the resource.
Yes, and quite frankly, we don't advise to pay for LinkedIn either. There's so much you can do on LinkedIn for free as well. So talk to your advisor about some tips on getting the biggest bang for your buck, and your buck being $0 spent on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
I fully
There's-
agree with that. Fully agree with that. Thank you, Nirvana and Mary Beth.
Any other questions from participants? All right. Well, thank you, Alisa. Oh, someone else?
Yeah, real quick, sorry.
Oh, perfect, please.
A little more details about the writing samples. I have like some from like memos and whatnot from classes. If they're not specific enough for like the area that they're looking for someone to go into, is it worthwhile to submit like a irrelevant topic, or should I rewrite like a fake memo? Or how would you? Or I saw like a job on Simplicity for like a social media manager, but I'm not much of a blogger, and so I don't obviously have a writing sample to show I can blog. So what do you recommend doing in those types of situations?
I could take this one. So I would say my best advice for a writing sample is whatever you're going to use, it needs to be your strongest writing sample. So ideally, if you have something that is on a relevant topic, so for example, if you're intellectual property and you have something from one of your IP classes that is a legal writing, that would be best case scenario. If you don't have something that is relevant subject matter wise, then you want to look at what is your strongest writing and what's your most sophisticated writing to date. So those are sort of the tips to think of. IP is one of those areas where we do sometimes recommend that you work with your professors or with your law librarians to come up with a writing sample if you don't have anything on point, because that is such a technical way of writing. So, but for other practice areas, normally we advise students to stay away from drafting something that hasn't been sort of carefully assigned or that wasn't in the context of an internship or clerkship where you had some directive, because sometimes that just doesn't result in your strongest writing. So that would be my quick take on that. We also have several resources you can reference that are actually just up on our public career services page pertaining to writing samples. I know many career services offices don't review writing samples for content. We encourage you to work with your writing center if you have one, or with your legal writing faculty or with your faculty advisor, but we're happy to help you select a sample that's most appropriate for any given job.
Okay, thanks, Dean O'Brien.
Any other questions?
So I have a question. My question is, if you are looking for, if you're looking for a remote position, so say I'm looking to extern, or I'm looking to for a summer position, if I'm looking for remote positions, what should I be searching for? Like what should I be looking for?
I guess I'll take a stab at that. I don't know if you're directing it to Thompson Hine, hoping to get a plethora of remote positions that they have available right now. Yeah, so I think, what I've seen mostly is a lot of research and writing positions that are remote, because that's something that can easily be done remotely. And in our case, like, we use Simplicity software program, and we highlight if the positions are, for 1Ls, 2Ls, 3Ls, new grads, experienced grads, but we also will indicate in there if that's a remote opportunity. And so I guess my new advice this academic year would be, don't use a search function that limits things to a city if you're looking remote, because you could actually be, if you say I'm only looking in Miami, Florida, and sure enough, there's someone in Miami, Florida who would take you remote from Cleveland or anywhere, you might be eliminating that. So be real strategic in how you search through Simplicity or any other software program.
Okay, thanks.
Are you asking in terms of like type of experience? Like, what type of experience should a law student be looking for? Like, what actually should you type into the search engine?
Yeah, no. So the latter. So not necessarily for a specific type of experience, but if you're looking for something remote, are there specific terms you should be, using, or specific things you should be looking for in your job search?
Yeah, I think it's sort of interesting because I think some of the platforms that are used, for job postings, as much as all of us had to quickly shift in March, also had to quickly shift. I have seen some, start to have that as a filter, that you can actually filter the positions. So I think we'll probably see that, a bit more moving forward in terms of remote positions. Often I find, at least thus far, it's in the actual description of the position itself, in terms of what the employer's expectations are for whether you're, how many hours you're there in person or you're remote. So you actually, in that sense, I would say you wouldn't really be filtering for remote positions. You'd be filtering for the roles that you're interested in, and then, sort of reading this description to kind of gauge what, environment that employer might be working in. I think we're all learning, though. So I'm sure that, that we're all starting to see newer and different things as well.
Yeah, I definitely think that we are in a bit of a fluid time. We're not entirely sure how long we're going to be remote, or for those of us that are still remote, and we're not entirely sure how long the pandemic is going to continue. And I think employers are adapting, as we go along. So the longer we're in this, the more changes that there'll be. So, if you're not seeing something that you're looking for now, 6 months from now, if we're still in this space, it could be a totally different, ball game. Other questions?
Can I piggyback off my last question? Okay, so as a follow-up to that, if I'm looking for, I guess, in considering remote work, is there a sense that kind of diminishes the experience that you can have? And does that then, I guess, become a detriment for a student later on? Or should students try to find work where they can actually be in person? Or is it okay to work remotely?
So with my employer hat on, since I'm on the line, I would say we're all in this remote space now, and no one knows where you're doing your work from. And so that's not even something that I think you even have to put on your resume. You don't have to identify whether you were doing work in person or whether you were doing work remotely. And I doubt that any of the law firms that had their summer associates this summer in a completely virtual way, none of those summer associates are going to be drawing attention to whether they were doing work in an office or doing work remotely. And I think the longer we are in this this state where, the vast majority of practicing attorneys at the moment are, or at least in the private sector, are working remotely in this country, the more normal remote work is going to be. You'll even see that a number of firms that have in place remote work policies are thinking about the utility of those policies now. And so I would say, take the work that you can get and just leave the remote or in person off of your resume. Anybody you disagree with that?
No, great answer.
All right. Any other questions that for our panelists? If not, thank you all for participating. We are really hopeful that you're finding these sessions useful. Please engage with us. You will be getting a survey from us about the utility of this program and other ideas for things that you think we should or could be covering that you're interested in. Check out the website and see what other programs are coming up, and sign up for the mock interview programs. You can never have too many mock interviews, so just do one with us. Trust me, it's going to be great, and you'll have a lot of practice in advance of virtual interviewing. All of our contact information, I believe, is up on the website. Is that correct? No? Okay, it will be. We'll have we'll put up our email addresses so that if you want to contact us, you will be able to, or at least one of our email addresses, and we'll get your question to the right place. And so we're grateful that you came, and hopefully you're finding it useful, and we will see you at our next program. Thank you to to Alisa and to Sarah and to Mary Beth. This was terrific.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks
Bye.
so much.